We're going to talk about what happened right at the beginning. My husband had a stroke. That's what started it all in 2018, 2 years after I retired. And it was an ischemic stroke in the carotid artery. It was blocked. And fortunately, we were able to find a vascular surgeon who was able to go in and do an endarterectomy on him right away. Consequently, he was only in the hospital a few days. I don't think it was like 3 or 4. At any rate, I noticed that while he was in the hospital, he was in ICU and didn't give him a shower or a bath or nothing. And I said something about it to the nurse at the station, and she said, "Well, we don't do that anymore." And I thought, why not? And so that was my first worry. It was a Catholic hospital, and I thought they would have some of the better protocols. They had a priest. He'd come in, Father Michael come in every day and gave my husband communion, and he was just wonderful. And they gave him good care. Of course, he never left ICU. I think they took him when they first brought him in. They took him to a regular floor until they could get him into surgery, and he started stroking again, so they took him back to ICU and he stayed there. So they were very efficient at that time. This was 2018. This Catholic hospital was efficient. And so he had the endarterectomy, and they had given him some stroke preventative medicine, so he didn't have another one. He came home. I immediately changed his diet so that we could lower the cholesterol, lower everything, because that was what was causing the stroke, it's causing blockages. He was eating stuff he shouldn't have been eating, especially hot dogs and deli meats and things like that. So I immediately got him on a good diet, and he was getting lots of exercise. He felt great. He really did. He recovered from that stroke 100%. So, about a year after he had the stroke, he started having problems with his eyes, so he had a cataract. And he had to go get cataract surgery. So that was next on the list. But he didn't have any more problems as far as stroke goes. We got his cholesterol under control. He didn't lose a whole lot of weight, but he started losing a little weight. And he was eating healthier. I was making sure that he was getting exercise every day, drank lots of water, slept good. So he went to get the cataract surgery done, and he did the first one, and he was just amazed. It was like day and night. He could see things he hadn't seen before, and we were thrilled. The next month, he had the other one done, the left eye, and he thought that went well, and they come out, and the difference was when he had that one, he was the 14th patient of the day to have cataract surgery. So they called the next morning and said one of the nurses that had assisted him in surgery had tested positive for COVID. So that was a little scare that we had to be aware of and take precaution. His surgeon was in a hurry because he was leaving that day to go on vacation. I guess he was going away for a week for Thanksgiving, and they're going to the islands or somewhere. And so he was in a little bit of a rush. At any rate, we thought it wouldn't be a problem because the first one went so well. 2 weeks into this recovery, he started seeing floaters in his eye, and he started having some pain, and his eye was getting red. So he went to one of the surgeon's colleagues, because this was a big agency. They had several offices all over. So we went to one of his colleagues and he said, wow, you've got a serious infection. I got to refer you to our retinal specialist, which is up north. So we drove to the town up north, and this retina specialist examined him and he said, I got to put a shot in that eye right away. And he did. And my husband said it was the most painful thing he'd ever felt. And told him, you have to come to my other office in Leawood, in a couple of days. So he did, and when he did, he got another shot. Well, my husband got several shots in his eye for this serious infection, plus he had to put drops in, and after about a week, none of it was doing any good. That infection was still there, and it was still, doing its thing and causing problems. So the surgeon said, we're just going to have to reoperate, and we're going to have to do another surgery to get all that out. So my husband went on under surgery twice for the same eye, and the surgeon was able to get the foreign matter out and clean up the infection and sent him home with a bunch of other eye drops. And after a couple of weeks, his eyes started to feel better. The swelling went down and he wasn't red anymore, and we believed the infection was gone. And he actually did great, but he said his sight was never right in that eye. Now, that, before all the surgeries, that was his good eye. After the surgeries, that was his bad eye. His sight was nowhere near as good as the other eye. So my husband said, I thought cataract surgery was going to take care of all this, but it didn't. And when we told that retina specialist that, he said, well, that's good as it's going to get, and he discharged them. And I thought, this is crazy. This is crazy. Of course, I hadn't been on this side of healthcare in a couple of decades. I had no idea. We didn't start going to providers and doctors and having problems till after we both retired. We both retired at 70. So, okay, so we did all that, and we thought, well, it's probably this doctor's office is probably the problem, because don't forget, he had a stroke and that went really well. So it's got to, except for the few little things with the hospital, but then we thought, maybe they're having problems with staffing or whatever. And so we just kind of chalked it up to that particular group of optometrists was probably not the best. And we went on. And we really, really didn't realize that we were starting to get into some of the crazy problems in healthcare that are out there today. And I can't imagine, I just can't imagine anyone going to any of these problems and dealing with them. So I finally, I said to my husband, and I went to my optometrist to get new glasses, and she said, you have a cataract. It needs to be removed. And I thought, not on your watch. And I'm beginning to think they were all kind of tied in together. And so I put it off. I did. I put it off because we had all this stuff going on with my husband's eyes. Because he started going in 2019, and 20 and 21 he was still having problems with cataract surgery, and we finally got that cleared up by the end of 21. And I wouldn't think that a couple of years would be the time limit for taking care of a couple of cataracts, but I was just amazed that I really believed that it was that group of doctors that were bad. I didn't think it was the system at all. I was still under the belief that I had run into a bad group of optometrists because, the VA paid for all this. My husband's a veteran, the VA paid for all this, and I thought, well, some VAs will refer you to the cheapest people they can get. So that was the kind of thing I looked at. Um, but that wasn't the case at all. Not really. So that was my first real run-in. I mean, the little glitches at the hospital for years prior, and then my husband's cataract surgeries, and I'm like, what's going on? I wasn't ready to believe it was the whole healthcare system. I was still under the guise that, you have good doctors and bad doctors like anything else, and that was where I was at. I wasn't ready to really think there was something else going on, but I should have. As an investigator, as a retired investigator, I should have been digging deep, and I wasn't. And now I wish that I had, because I probably could have stopped a lot of things. But at any rate, that was, 2021. About the time COVID come along, that's when healthcare really started getting bad. Now, they had an excuse for it to get bad. And that's what they were using. So, but it goes on. It gets worse. It does go on, and I will take you on my journey and help you understand what happened and the timeline that it happened and how we can pinpoint this all. So stay with me for some more adventures.